Before the stream starts, welcome to the Nordic Library here at Nordic Culture Point. My name is Anki Hellberg-Sågfors and I work as a cultural developer, especially with focus on our premises in Suomenlinna called B28, where Carla Tapparo has been doing her artist residencies the last 2 weeks. And we are very happy to have this artist talk now here. And Carla has found a wonderful discussion partner in Melike İșleyen. Thank you, Melike İșleyen, who is a researcher and a trauma therapist and many other things, which we will learn more about in a while. And we're very happy to have you here and to have you discuss on, I think, many topics. The sea, the healing process, but you can take over from there. I want to state that we have a safer space policy here at Nordic Culture Point, so we want everybody to feel safe and well treated. So if there's anything that's happening that makes you not feel that, then you can contact me or my colleague Amanda over there. And I also want to state that this residency that Carla Tapparo has done now for the last 2 weeks is also a collaboration with Island Connect, which is an EU-funded project for artist residencies on islands in Europe. So it's a kind of a exchange between the islands, which is really interesting. So I think Suomenlinna is the smallest island in the network because we have Ireland and Sardinia and those a bit bigger ones also. But are we all set, Fredrik? Yes, wonderful. Welcome to the artist talk. I give the word to you.
Thank you. Thank you. One more welcome and good afternoon. And thanks for joining us for this artist talk, which we titled as Imagination to Disrupt Linearity. And my name is Melike İșleyen. I'm a doctoral candidate. I'm closely working on the line of visual cultures of violence and resistance. And I will come back to that later, how we met. There will be perhaps certain lines to talk about those connections. But here, today we are here to talk about the culmination of Carla's residency with the Island Connect, during which she was spending time between the islands of Åland and Suomenlinna. And I think the main line of this last week's, to me, looking back to her work, but also our short conversations before this conversation happening, it's just thinking about the interwoven threads of knots, the time and the ocean. So today our conversation will also connect that to this interwoven lines, this 3 connections, but also thinking about art both as a method, but also as a way of being in the world, and how it can actually connect to that, disrupt this linearity of thinking about the time and thinking about how we occupy certain spaces in this world. And time is at the heart of that concept, that's discussion as a colonial and capitalist notion of progress. So I think it would be interesting to start by hearing from you, Carla, about who are you and maybe hearing more about your artistic journey as a beginning of this conversation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, everybody. My name is Carla Tapparo. I'm originally from Argentina and I have been living in Italy for around 3 years. And I would like to start by showing some of my previous work, previous to this residency, in order to have a little bit of context. We might have some, we will see how the images go. And I wanted to start with this because this is a project that I did when I was back home in Argentina, and I was part of a group of people doing like a series of television for children, and it was mostly about the Argentinian territory, so the flora and fauna and the locations in Argentina. And I wanted also to bring this up, because you're going to see that my work goes far away from here. But it's always good to remind also this part, I think. And I will try now to go through another. Beautiful. But this is also part of that project, which was aired in Argentina as well, but it took like 6 years in the making to be able to do it, for people to see it. And then I also wanted to bring, after being in Argentina, I did my master's in Switzerland with a Hans Boerg Wyss Scholarship. And then we can go to the other image. And this image was my thesis, Brain Fugue. And my thesis was more in relation to the idea of disidentification by Joseba Esteban Muñoz. And it's this idea that identity presents itself like a site of a struggle in between what we feel in our bodies and the way that other people perceive us. And this change in the scenery, like moving from Buenos Aires, Argentina, to Switzerland. I was living in Sierre, which is a quite small city. And the way that perhaps you present yourself in one place, people react in a way, and the way that you present yourself might not change, but the way that people perceive you might change, even if, because you change in context. So, another one. So my thesis was actually a speculative fiction, and it followed a group of activist friends who biohacked themselves to be mermaids. And this was in relation to missing my friends in Argentina, with whom I used to have and we will see it after. We used to have still they do, I'm just not there, self-defense, self-organized group. So we learned how to do self-defense, and we taught other people, queer and women, how to defend themselves. Another one. Yes. So, and I wanted to show a little bit of the pages, just because I think that it's very important to understand rhythm in literature, and this is what I was looking for when I was doing my thesis. Each chapter have a different way of being presented in order to have a different embodiment of the text. Another one. Another one. So this is kind of like a choral. These were my notes. And then another one. Okay, and this was the video that I presented alongside my thesis. So this was also part of my thesis. I always dance alone, I never dance alone, and it was done in collaboration with friends from mostly Argentina. So Víctimas de Nada was the name of our self-defense, self-teaching, self-organized self-defense teaching group, yes. Then Laura Ige is a friend of mine, and she put her face through photogrammetry, and I used her in some videos. Then Lara Alarcón did a choral. Florence Alonso did some VFX. Carolina Passo was a Chilean artist that was with me in Switzerland, and she did some camera for me. And then Marcel Betricet was one of our professors, and he helped me do like a DIY snorri cam, because I was also very interested in this, this outside perception that is attached to yourself. A snorri cam is these cams that are used in cinema that are attached to your body, so when you move, it moves with you. Another one. Well, yes, I was very interested. This is in Genoa, in Italy, and this was the first time that I went to Italy. And I was very struck by the wild boars and the packs of wild boars that just are around. Another one. And also this idea of like nature versus artificial, like this construction that we have of binaries. Because it is related for me to this idea of identity as a binary inside and outside thing that is not really, no, it's a relationship that happens and that you construct and people construct with you. Another one. Okay. So after I finished my master's thesis, I returned to Argentina and I finished the project that I showed before, so the animation show. And then I went back to Germany and I was able to do this piece. That is actually I would say my favorite self-piece, like my favorite piece of myself, which is, yes, weird to say, but it's nice. Egnatostomata, I cannot even pronounce it, but this word means is the prehistoric fish that develop gills. And this was a continuation of this research and this speculative fiction. So in this case, I was a mermaid that had already been fished out and was trying to reconstruct the story that was told in the video and in the text. So the ocean in this case became quite symbolic, like as a place of unity and of union where you were with this chosen family, and then being fished out meant to be taken away from that. So it was mostly like a song, and then there were like a moment of partying where I would also just talk, like recite certain intimate moments, and then another one, and then I finished doing this type of, like a smaller performance in which I would take all of chia seeds on me, and then I will try to bring them back into the bucket while I was also like remembering like the whole process of being with my friends and so on. Another one, yes, and this is okay. And this I wanted to share because these are works that I did before in this kind of series that was bigger, because I think that it's also important to understand that perhaps we do certain things that don't have the gravity or the weight, and they look less like finished pieces of work, and they look more like exercises, but they all contribute to what we do. So these were different performance and live coding performance. I used to work in tech while I was also working in art direction. So I had a lot of performances that were related to the digital space and, yes, live streaming and this type of thing. Another one. While I was also in Argentina, while I was working in the direction, I was also doing a mentorship with Victor Sapi for the New Instruments for Musical Expression. That is a conference that is done in different places of the world. Like it has been done in Mexico, it has been done in Ireland. And I did a paper that was called Bodily Awareness Through Rhymes, the automatizing music making processes, where I also made this small sensor that just changed your voice while you were singing. So this idea of embodiment and being able to insist on embodiment or try to find other ways into the somatic feeling of yourself is something that has interested me in a lot of ways, perhaps not only not only through technology, but not only through like aesthetics. Another one. And while we were working with Victor, we realized that while I was working in Argentina, it was very hard to get certain sensor parts, certain Arduinos even, like very things that perhaps in Europe or in the USA are very readily available. In Argentina, it's very hard to buy because the tax and the import-export is very high, or you cannot just not find them, or you have to ask for them and they will take months to arrive. So he started designing this open source project that is called LDSP, and basically it hacks Android phones to be used as embedded audio platforms. Mm-hmm. This means that then people, of course, this is an idea of democratizing technology for artistic purposes, but it requires a level of understanding of C++, for example, or pure data or certain types of technology that, of course, are not as simple as like, yeah, everybody can use it. I mean, it is like that. But that, I started contributing with him with that, and then I worked on this piece that is called Karaoke of Dead Birds, in which these phones were haunted by the voices and the songs of extinct birds. And this is a relationship that interests me because extinction is very related to extractivism. So, in a lot of ways, extractivism kills the habitat, and then animals cannot return or go extinct. Then another one, that's a video, but I don't think that we have time. And alongside Karaoke of the Birds, I started doing kind of workshops or sharings in which with other people we would try to map the space where we were in. So we would try to imitate sounds that we found in the space and create a small song. So it was very funny because I did it almost all the time with adults, and we become like children. So we are starting to like make the sound of cows, and they sound like wolves. They don't really sound like cows. And like you're trying to make the sound of the wind, and then it's just very funny. And it's also very funny because it ends up being more like a space of trying to find consensus and trying to work together more than an aesthetic or an artistic practice, which is also something that very much interests me. And then another one. We're almost done, I promise, and then we can talk about nicer things. And these are also other works that for me are related to the works that I did before. And I bring this back because I do think it's important to not just show the things that you put in a festival or that take you a lot of time. And these perhaps were more like exercises. And one of them was also a performance in which I was reading fairy tales that I had written for a partner. And then the other one is me playing Ovelt ich mag die Klassen, no German, by Bach on wet clay, because I was interested also in this idea of canonical music and the role it plays in the arrangement of the world. And another one. Oh, okay. Yes.
May I interrupt you here, maybe, because this is actually the very beautiful artistic product of this residency period. So perhaps before moving into that line, now you left me with all this insightful aspects of your evolving work, how your artistic path also has evolved through different experiences, but also through your own migration experience. Some people could perhaps call it as by choice, but obviously there were elements that we could think about how you were dealing with some binary aspects or some sort of transitional spaces and embodiments coming together. But in between all of the storylines, there is one thing that really struck me when we met last summer. That you didn't hear out of that artistic accounts and this presentation is it's your work for the rescue, for the search and rescue operations. So when I think about all this sea, ocean, migration from different angles coming into your work, your artistic practice, it really hits me and put me in a position of thinking about, okay, what's the kind of connection between your voluntary work for the rescue operations and then your artistic inquiry? And if I'm pushing for some sort of connections, stop me here. But I'm just curious to hear where did the as a metaphor, as a tool, the knots somehow start hunting you to think towards that connections.
Yes.
Quite a big question, sorry.
No.
Quite a layered one.
Yes. I'm just sorry that I breathe very loudly with this, so I find it very
And let me also correct myself when it comes to your experience of working for the search and rescue operations. I'm not really asking for any sort of sensationalist aspect. What kind of image of children you've seen or etc. But more
for sure. I volunteer in search and rescue in the Central Mediterranean, which means that I spend a lot of time at sea. And of course, it's a very stressful, it's not a pleasurable thing to do. But of course, you have these very stressful moments, and you also have a lot of waiting and doing nothing moments in the middle of the ocean with no internet and no nothing. And I have been mostly, and I prefer smaller crews, so boats that are quite small and that have 7 people crew, 9 people crew. So we do have, everybody has to do everything, and this means that you get taught, seafarers teach you how to do knots. And it's a skill sharing experience, and it's a very social experience in which, of course, you have a moment before you go at sea, but it's also something that you do while you are at sea. If you have time, you practice knots, and it also becomes just part of your daily life. And I assume that a lot of people here perhaps have this connection to the ocean as well, seafaring practice. So I would say that this work would not exist if I wasn't volunteering at sea. Because that's how I came to knots, and this I think is the relationship that I made between knots and the ocean and time, because it is kind of this dilatation, suspension of time, it becomes a little bit like this when you are at sea. So yeah, I think that that's the connection that I make. I don't know if I would say it's a metaphor, but I think it's this like beauty of knots in a way, like beauty in a sense of like it's very fun to make knots, it's very pleasurable to make knots, it's very pleasurable when you're trying to fix something like an aft hatch and you're just like and it's done and it's beautiful, like you feel very proud of being able to do something so fast and so neatly, and also they're very pretty, like aesthetic, at least for me, aesthetically pleasing. So it is kind of like a combination of very weird feelings in this sense, which I enjoy. I think it's yes, I think it's good to have this type of rhythmic and like repetitive in a way type of things to do with your hands in certain types of situations, especially if you know it's going to be stressful eventually. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, we are at the end of the day, we are talking about an experience in the middle of all of this necropolitical regime of this liquid border, and one of the most surveilled borders.
Yeah.
And also when it comes to activist actions and its criminalization, it's thinking about that, like when you are talking about knots within that context particularly. I think it's the way how you talk about it, it's even takes a form of like communing with time through that notes and through that practices. But I think I will try to shift you to a bit of more like thinking about notes, time and knowledge transmission side. I was wondering if you could tell maybe more about what does it mean for you to thinking about not just as a form, you gestured that a bit, but how do you think of also like, how do you like understand more notes, more of a kind of, or noting, more of a kind of record keeping, memory keeping, time keeping?
Yes, okay, so perhaps we can go a little bit into other images, because those are knots that I made, and that's a bowline, and that's a butterfly knot, and that's a splicing, and people really commented on my splicing, so I'm very happy. But I think that there are other pictures that we can a little bit more. Okay, one more. Yes, great, thank you. Because of course, I started this project through this experience at sea, but also then I started, or I already had some references in relation to knots as not necessarily timekeeping technology, but a record-keeping technology. So, for example, the quipu in the Inca Empire and also the Waransai in Okinawan culture, it's not used to keep time, but it used to keep debt. So certain transactions in terms of money or in terms of objects were kept through knots. I mean, I didn't bring a lot of other images, but then you can see like the tens and the thousands, and this was a different type of knot, or was made in a different type of knot. So it's a notation, basically, of debt keeping. And that, kind of interests me as a way of, there it is, not as counting record keeping technology. But then as a timekeeping technology, I think it's more related to, perhaps we can go, I think, down one image. One more? Okay, so then I was thinking a lot about like knots as time, and then this could be understood as a metaphor. So in mathematical theory, the unknot is a circle, and I think that we understand, or a lot of visual culture has this idea of cyclical time, so circles as natural time, like the seasons and so on, and then we see time as a progression in terms of a line when we think of, yes, capitalism, colonialism. So in this case, knots are an in-between that complexify this relationship, so it's neither circular, seasonal, completely like perfect and unified, idealized version of nature, but also it's not a progressive, depleting, yes, let's take everything and just move forward type of idea of time. So I was this a Fisher vessel in Porto Empedocle, but they had this and it's beautiful. Look at that. And so for me, this was a very, I think that this was kind of the thing that really interests me. Like, you are communing with time when you're making notes, but also to be able to see time not so much as a circle or a line, but like entanglement or this kind of like knitting fabric or like this kind of, yes.
Some sort of return simultaneity.
Yeah,
So
like it's everything happening, no? Like it can be asynchronous and it can be synchronicity and it can also be entanglements, and it's not one or the other so much as all of it together. So that was kind of the interesting point of me. I hope that answers.
Yeah, okay. It's and I would say perhaps just like thinking about some of your previous works. I think it's this last residency is not the like only time that you kind of contrast that linear lines, like lines, kind of gesturing colonial time together with the circle understanding of like quite a kind of like more sophisticated understanding of time with the notes and circles. From there, I would like to actually push it towards a bit more thinking about maybe disruption, the very concept of disruption and linearity. It's because I'm curious about how your work engage with this very idea of disrupting linearity. But a bit more on the line of perhaps, let's say, either politically, ecologically, or from whatever angle you would like to open up that.
Okay. I think that perhaps we can go up again, just to show a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So I think that we can go all. Yes, there I think it's good. So I started my residency and here first in the Island Connect residency in the Åland Islands, and then I came to Sommelina, and I did all of my work has been done with gifted ropes by fishermen and sailors. So they were people gave me the ropes that were already discarded, were not going to be used anymore, and this is something that I think is related in terms of instead of trying to buy new material to make art, instead of trying to continue in this cycle of just consuming something in order to be able to make art. Perhaps we can also just build these networks in order to use things that had already been discarded, especially because if I am talking about time and I am talking about the passage of time, it makes more sense to use something that has some life breath into it. But then in terms of the disruption of linearity, I think that this is a very big, it's a very hard question in terms of the arts, because I do think engaging with the arts, it is in a way a suspension of time, or at least I think of it like that. On a personal level, when you work with an art practice, things seem to slow down and you're kind of talking to a material and you're not engaging in I try my best to not engage in a productivist manner. So this meant that this work was hung in the place where you put your clothes, cupboard, I don't know. It was in the place that I was in Shokar, and it was just looking at it for days and just engaging with it and not hurrying it up. And then I think that on another level, with this work, I was also contemplating other types of fables regarding, for example, making of knots. So there is this bowline knot that has a story that is, the bowline knot is I don't think that you can see it, but it's the one that goes up. So, and that it has a little story that you make to learn how to do it, that you put the snake and around the tree and into the snake and into the lake, the snake. And I understood that also as a way of a creation myth, if that makes sense. Because you are creating something as a knot, and it has a whole story to do it. And it is actually quite, for me, very close to a lot of creation stories in like indigenous cultures in Latin America. So that was also one of the starting points that I had in in the videos that I created in Suomenlinna. But I think that the disruption of linearity comes from these experiences of engaging with things and not trying to suffocate them, not trying to use them for your own gain, but also like having a dialogue with them.
Speaking of that dialogue, or like that, perhaps I could phrase it more like a relational aspect of like having some sort of engagement with materialities and beyond the materialities, with that experiences, that memories, that traditions or cosmologies. What about the ocean? And what about your collaboration with the ocean as a collaborator?
Yes. I mean,
because you kind of gestured the autonomy of ocean, and I think it was coming also like within different works. It would be nice to like, it would be interesting to hear like, what does it mean to approaching ocean as a collaborator?
Yeah, I think that because this part of the project that it has these three axes, so not time and ocean, the ocean, and the idea of deep time in the ocean, and the idea of ocean's autonomy was something that interests me, I guess, because I have spent time in the ocean. So the fact that the ocean is its own being, it's very obvious when you are there. I mean, clearly it is not something that you can tame in any way. It's not something that you can of course exploit it, and we do exploit the ocean. But it's clearly a being on its own. And when we were in the Åland Islands, we had the possibility also to engage with Husö Marine Biological Station. But of course, the time that we had there, 2 weeks, is not enough to be able to continue this exploration, hopefully later, hopefully more in the future. So I think that it's a part that I'm still looking at. There are certain threads that I want to pull out. For example, there are a lot of marine biologists that use biofouling. And biofouling is when you put something, usually artificial, in the ocean, for example, ropes, and you see how it gets colonized, this is the biological term, by the flora and fauna of the ocean. And some marine biologists use this as a way of counting time as well. So as a way of engaging with time and as a way to understand how are the conditions of the ocean. So this was something that I was interested in, but haven't been able yet to like deepen, profundize, no, deepen, yes.
I'm curious to like hear more about that, but before moving to that, so you mentioned that you've been working with the ropes gifted by the fishermen and perhaps also mooring lines. And I've been reading the text coming along with the installations. It was quite interesting actually, like hearing like somehow like being with you, like going through with that experience, through that kind of sensorial elements in your written text. Could you tell a bit more about like what kind of experience, like how was your experience actually with the smell and like with all the other aspects that you've been hinting throughout that text?
Yes, so I think that perhaps I'll lead one more image. Yes. So this is the text. So I did in Åland Islands, also to give context, I had 2 weeks of installation, 2 weeks of installation, 2 weeks of residency, and in a moment we had an exhibition, and the work that you have seen before was the work for the exhibition. And after that exhibition, and after, or in between doing that exhibition, I did this text. And this text is basically, it's called Snok, which is a snake, which probably all of you know. And it was because in Sjökar there were a lot of these snakes, and clearly snakes in this bowline story are important, but also snakes and ropes, I mean, it's clear that the things that they have in common, I think. So this was a recounting of my experience in that residency, a little bit magical realism, a little bit snakes and ropes becoming one, let's say, just to give context. And then Yeah, I mean, I got the first lines from a fisherman called Life İșleyendiscuss. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And we just went. He was preparing the harvest festival, so he was smoking fish. And he was like, yes, I have a lot of things to give you. And it was a lot, like I have a whole bag of things now. And it's great. But it was also like you have to, like, there are ones that I haven't cleaned, and so there are a lot of algae, and I was in the residence place with this kind of gas oil, algae, yes, yeah, that phase. I mean, I like it, but it is quite intense. We were in the car with that smell. And then in Jokar, I met Gunnar, who is a sailor and also a woodworker, and we did, this was beautiful, we did a knotting workshop with the children of the school, and it was 5 children of 8 and to 11. So it was also a very fun engagement with the people of the place. And then he gave me some hemp ropes. So now I had also this. And then here, with Somelina, we went to the dry dock, and I also got nets and ropes. But I think that during the process that I was making them, I think that to be able to engage with a material that is so receptive and so malleable and so fun to work with, in the sense that you can tie and untie. It reminded me a lot of my work when I was drawing, more than when I'm doing video or when I'm doing performance, because then it's kind of like a more direct dialogue, if you will. It feels more like the ropes are like, yeah, you could do this knot here. Like I have a little cut, so I can make this knot, so the cut is not visible. So it felt more, it reminded me a lot of that type of feeling, instead of, even though there was this conceptual underpinning, of course, it felt very much like talking to the material and the material responding. I also think that the idea of working with something that you can undo, so like you make the knots and then you can unmake them, like the knots are no longer there, I just have the ropes. It's a very fun concept. Like you don't have to be pressured into what you're doing. You can just undo it afterwards. It's very adaptable. I really like them, clearly.
I'm not sure how much, because it's I think when it comes to another completely different aspect of your productions, it's I think you've been mentioning rhythm, but I'm not sure to what extent in this work you have a kind of like experience or like some sort of like engagement with. Particularly, I'm now thinking about sea shanties and maybe like work songs, that traditions, also closely in relation to the time. So could you tell maybe a bit more on that line? Did you have the chance to like maybe connect that, like this work, or do you have maybe like any plans of connecting that later?
I am very interested in like timekeeping technologies. I consider them, and sea shanties are one of those. Work songs, I would say, as well. Prayer was also a timekeeping technology. Like people used to pray to know how much time the bread was going to be in the oven. Sea shanties were used mostly to keep time, so people would work all of them at the same time, like for whatever reason. And I am very interested in this idea of timekeeping and how it can be kept collectively through voice. It has been very hard to do it alone. Like, I mean, I was working, I have done sound, when I work in the rope, I'm also recording myself working with the rope, which is a very nice sound, but nothing came to me, like no song came to me, which is not fun. But I have been thinking about it, like what would it mean, or how would that engage? When I was in the Åland Islands, I was in Mellan, where there is the Pommern. See? Okay, great. Which is a ship. And they do have like a sea shanty association. And it was a very fun, I met with the people from the Pommern, and there were these 2 sailors. One of them belonged to the association, the other one didn't. And one of them was like, why? What is the point in keeping sea shanties alive if they don't have the same purpose as they did before, no? Like now people usually don't sing sea shanties when they're working. They make no sense. And the other one was like, well, but you have to share this. Like it was like it's a cultural heritage in a way, like immaterial cultural heritage. And I found that debate, no one was wrong, of course, no one was right. It was just like yes, different ways of seeing something. And perhaps some people look at it as the value of the thing, like the thing that why do you do it? And some people just look at it from what it is. So for me, this is kind of the thing that I'm currently engaging with. Like, does it make sense to have songs for the notes as the notes are? Does it make sense to have, make collective songs trying to make the notes? Like, what would it mean to have I'm thinking right now, like in the spot, like I have no idea. I had friends that I have talked with this about this with, and they said like, oh, I can try to make you a song. So now I have a few friends who are trying to make not songs. We will see what happens. But I think it's also kind of this collective effort that I am interested in sea shanties. Of course, when the sea shanty happens, it's a person that is singing and the other people are responding. Like it's not such a collective idea. It's actually quite hierarchical in some ways. But it also depends, like work songs used to be more collective. Yes, so. But I'm thinking, I'm still engaging with this.
Now I will slowly taking back to where we start, going to the side of imagination, and our title of our conversation, the role of imagination to disrupt linearity. How do you see imagination as a transdisciplinary artist, whether call it in terms of, I don't know, artistic, political, or collective perspectives? Like, how do you see imagination as a force that can act as a force to open up other ways of seeing, sensing, being in the world, and connecting to the time? Perhaps also in relation to other aspects of life, not just artistic creations, but...
Yeah, I think that I think as you said, imagination is the force that it makes trying to go outside of what we have seen as possible. So if we engage with things in different ways, so if we stop thinking of time either as cyclical or as linear, then we can start to believe in other ways of doing things. So I would say that imagination in this sense is kind of like a methodology. And that's how art as well works. So art gives you certain ideas or certain notions or certain tools, like usually in relation to pleasure as well, like in aesthetic pleasure, and so it makes you want to do it, to engage with things in a different frame of mind or of body, or both, I mean, without this distinction. And I am very interested in, I think I am very interested in the imagination in regards to time, because I do think that we think a lot about space in a very like in a way that is both material and immaterial. It's kind of like we think of a space as not related to matter and not related to time, and those are things that cannot be separated from each other. And I think that in this sense, I'm also very much interested in our conception of time and why do we have this idea of time. Like, why do we have to do the things in a certain way, or why do we have to occupy our lives in this kind of modules when we could be doing things in a different way? So for me, I do think I wouldn't say imagination stops at art. I think that art is just the most evident use of imagination. But I would say that science also has a clear use of imagination. And I would say that people who engage in any type of activity with their own bodies and their own selves are engaging in imagination. The thing is to make it intentional in a way, to try to understand why we think in certain ways, or why we think in certain categories of time, certain categories of space.
And perhaps how do we deal with certain impose ways of doing that. And I think, I don't know, I interpret the way how you use difference, repeating, coming again and again, in a way to like, maybe not like figuring out something brand new, but reconnecting with certain cosmologies of life, certain like understanding of life, more of indigenous ones perhaps, and reconnecting them, kind of delinking from the modern impositions, modern colonial impositions, and relinking with those ones that were suppressed, that were oppressed.
Yes, and I think that this is something that we have been talking about because this is not the first conversation that we have. It's this relationship with, indigenous knowledges, and this can go from Avyajala, so like Andean, Wichi culture, but it can also be Maori. Like it is a lot of, there have been a lot of cultures that had a different cosmology, no? Like a different way of being in the world. And for me, of course, this is interesting, but at the same time, not but at the same time, it is also important that to understand that we can think new myth, and we can think of new, not new in the sense of trying to create novelty, but for example, this bowline knot that has this story, and this story is shared across seafarers because they are engaging in different parts of the world. But then I heard it in Italy, I heard it here, and it's usually always a snake, and it's usually always a rabbit. And this is also a culture that has grown, and we can use those, we can also engage with those things in order to create new ways, like in this sense, no? Like there are a lot of possibilities of what we can do. And I think that for me, that's the important aspect. Of course, to pay respects. And as well, to engage with the things that we have present in our daily lives. So what I had present in my daily life the last 2 years have been knots and have been being at sea. So this is kind of this is where I can also find grounding at sea.
Well, connecting to that and like slowly coming back to the end of our conversation, perhaps. So your current residency is ending. I'm curious about so what are the kind of unresolved threads, like new questions, like new curiosities, will you kind of like taking with you, and what are the kind of future projects, if there's anything you could tell us?
Yes. Oh my God, I breathe so heavy. Yes, so I'm leaving tomorrow, which is very sad. I would love to come back. I think that I would really like to engage with the Baltic Sea more. It's a very different sea than the Mediterranean Sea, where I usually am. I would also, of course, love to continue this in the Mediterranean. I think that it has, yes. And then I am going to go to Ishigaki, Okinawa in February, March, which is also very interesting because part of my research was related to Warasani, which is one of the ways of recording depth and keeping record related to knots. So those are the things that I know are going to happen in the future. Yes, in relation to this specific thing.
And maybe before moving to the
final, yes.
Q&A session, it's let's say you had, I don't know, 4 weeks more during this residency time. I think you've been gesturing into that, some sort of
I would love to stay.
desires to having longer conversations with some people, etc. But how do you see that? What else you would be doing, or
Well, I think that, for example, the video that I made, that was the videographer was Anna Broms, which is an artist that is based in Suomenlinna currently. I also had a very nice talk with a marine archaeologist, Minna, I don't remember her last name, and then the Huse Biological Station as well. So I think that there were a lot of opening things that could, of course, continue. like in this sense, like threading the ocean's autonomy, threading a little bit more into ocean's deep time, but also getting more into the communication with the dry dock or fishermen, or like finding another big bag to put all of the stuff that I would like to take. So of course there is 2 weeks is hard to, it's good to start a conversation, and it's good to start this project, because basically this project was started here. Like I was able to have these questions, and I was able to play with materiality, and I was able to do a lot of things because of these 2 weeks in the Åland Islands and 2 weeks in Sommelina. But I think that I would really, of course, benefit getting more these threads. But I am also very trustful. Like I have a lot of confidence that I will come back. And perhaps it's good to just take a break and not think about this for a while and see what happens, and then come back in a few months, be like, oh, now I understand what I have to do, which is great. Yes.
I'm looking forward to seeing like so what are the what will be the threats, also like hunting during your next residency time. But maybe now we can move to the short Q&A session. If you have any comments, any questions, anything that you feel curious.
I love your skirt.
Of course. Yeah, I really love, thank you very much, by the way. I really love you mentioned about ocean as a being. And you mentioned also that the difference you notice between Baltic Sea and other oceans or seas. What is the difference? What you found here peculiar?
Yes, I mean, honestly, in the sense, the sea that I am mostly in is the Mediterranean, and it is quite a calm sea, like in the sense of like I have been in places where you can just, like there is no current, there is no wind, there is no waves, and you're just staying, and it seems almost like a lake, for example. That is very different from the Baltic Sea. Yes, and most of the places that I have been, for example, in Žokar or in édhèa, the soil is also, like the land is also very different. So the cliffs are also very different. So for me, it has been a very humbling experience, if that makes sense, to engage with a sea that is not, I mean, I have been in storms in the Mediterranean, and of course it is not that it's always calm, but the Baltic Sea is way more, I don't know how to say, like forceful, or perhaps it's because of the wind, perhaps it's because of the way the waves break. But I have this image in like Žokar that I had hiked for like 5 hours, and then there were these beautiful cliffs, and the ocean was just like breaking on them, and you could see the stones just going on the shore because of the force of the ocean, of the sea. And so that, like, in a very bodily way, I think that there is a difference. And also then talking with like marine biologists or the marine archaeologists, and people tell me like this is a very young sea, for example, in comparison to other seas. And it's actually a quite shallow sea in comparison to other seas, for example. So perhaps that difference is also make it very specific in this sense, no? Perhaps this like force comes also from this youngness, like this. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's true. You should talk to someone that knows more. But so for me, it has been like this. And also I'm from, like in Argentina, the seas that we have is the Atlantic. So it's already an ocean. Like it's not this idea of sea. So the horizon, for example, the way that you see islands or you don't see islands. Because in édhèa or in certain parts of Žokar, I could see smaller islands when I went to the cliffs, and then when you go in the other side of the island, and then you just see openness. And that is also a very different experience, I think. So I think that that's kind of like Yes, the engagement that I got. I would stay in Jokkar for like Jokkar. Jokkar. I try. I would stay there for 2 months, for 1 year, if I could. I mean, honestly. Yeah. Thank you. I really like your skirt.
Yes, thank you very much for the interesting artist talk. So it sounds like you've had a great time here. So I was wondering, what do you think makes a good artist residency?
Oh.
I know that's a big question.
I mean, I think it really depends on what you're looking for, in the sense of, I have been in artist residencies that I already had a project. So I went there and it was just like a theater place, and I got my lights and I did my lights and I made my performance and it was done, no? But for example, I think that this residency, because it was like a work in progress residency and was more like a research residency to start like a new project, I think it was great because it gave me variety, like different places to be in. It also gave me the possibility, for example, of this artist talk, the open studio, the exhibition in the Åland Islands. So it was also possible for me to materialize my thinking, because sometimes you get very research residencies and then you don't talk to anybody and you're very alone and you don't know what you're doing anymore.
And to be honest, I was personally mesmerized by the amount of people you met during such a short time. I think it's such an opportunity.
And I think that this is also because of the organizers, Anki, in the sense of like people being like, oh, you want to do this? Let's talk to these people. And I think that that's kind of what makes the good residency. If it is a residency in which you have to perform by the end of the residency, then the organizers have to be able to give you what you need to get that. And if you're starting a residency in regards of research, then the organizers are willing to like engage with you and say like, oh, you can talk to these people, you can talk to these people. So I think that it's that. Also funding. That's the reality of things, like you need funding. So there are a lot of residencies that I would love to do, but if there is no funding, it's very hard to engage with them. So I'm very happy that Island Connect got the funding that it got, because that's what makes it possible for me to be here.
And that's exploitive.
Yeah, and that's important. So I think that, but I also would like to I mean, there are other residencies that are more focused in other ways and they're also very good. But this was great. Thank you.
I just want to comment that I found it really intriguing what you said about making new mythologies, because the strength that is in mythology and in the imagery and the texts and the stories that come from them, it's really, I've thought of it mostly as something that we have as a strength from far away or from time-wise. But I think it's really a source of strength to think that you can create new ones even from things around you. I liked what you said about the knot and the snake. They are like very images that go through time.
And I am. And this is something that we have talked in these days that we have been together, and something that I think a lot about. Of course, I mean, every myth was created, perhaps not by an individual person, but a collective of people, and then it was, taken into time. So it started somewhere. And I think that sometimes we forget that we can also be in these collectives that create things. So creating a new mythology for me is also kind of like a collective effort. And I mean, of course, I can make my video and do these bowline notes, but it would be great if eventually, no one remembers me, but remembers. And I think that that's kind of the important aspect of things. And I do think that image and symbolism in this sense is very important. So yeah, let's go. Let's do some new meets.
Do we have another question or comments? Shall we?
Yeah, we don't need to.
Thank you for this inspirational conversation, and thank you for listening so
Thank you
attentively.
for coming.
And thank you for the questions.
Yes.
Thank you so much also on behalf of Nordic Culture Point. And we're really happy to have had you here at the Artist Residency, Carla. And thank you, Melike, for coming all the way from Oslo to moderate this discussion. That was really wonderful. And it would be really interesting to hear about your research as well, because can you just tell us what it is about, like, shortly, so we know?
Oh, yeah, I didn't want to really occupy, I didn't want to really steal the spotlight from Carla, but so my research also engaged with art-based practices and films, dealing with usually not with the systematic killing of children, but when it comes to the occupation of senses and how, let's say, films coming from indigenous women filmmakers take place exactly in that relationship, and how, what kind of power, what kind of practice we can see through from these perspectives brought by these indigenous filmmakers when it comes to dismantling such colonial management of that, not just in the form of killing, but in the form of occupation of sensing, in the form of occupation of perception, and the way how we think about futures, different futures, and the colonial ends. So I think that will be the shortest answer to what I'm doing.
That's really intriguing. And when you talk about occupying the senses, that is something that really happens when you go into the sea and indulge into the sea. We were looking with Carla at some children's books here, picture books before the talk made by Linda Bundestam, where there is this creature that is the only axolotl alive and living at the bottom of the sea and in the pressure and with those senses and so somehow I see this whole conversation like almost happening under the sea or in a submarine like setting with the cars going outside and we're being here safe from everything. So thank you for this sacred and safe space that you created for us, and thank you everybody for coming.